Live from London, this is BBC News. The US authorities believe the suspect behind the deadly New Orleans attack was not solely responsible. The FBI searched the home of the main suspect, a US Army veteran. This is the scene live in New Orleans. President Biden says the attacker was inspired by the Islamic State group. Amongst the victims, a Princeton University football star, a father of two, and an aspiring nurse. Today's other main headlines. One of the four people hit by a car in London's West End has died in hospital. He's been named as 25-year-old Aidan Chapman. New cancer figures from the health service in England and Wales show more people than ever are being diagnosed in the early stages. And a new discovery of dinosaur footprints in Oxfordshire, the largest ever uncovered. Hello and welcome to BBC News. President Biden has said the former US Army veteran who drove into crowds of people in New Orleans was inspired by so-called Islamic State. And just to return to that news that has come in from the White House, President Biden will have a meeting with his Homeland Security team in the Situation Room in the next few hours to get an update on the situation in New Orleans. We're expecting a police update also in about 45 minutes. If it starts on time, obviously we will carry it live. You're watching BBC News. You're watching Verified Live here on BBC News. Now, let's get more on that story that came in just a little while ago. A man who was hit by a car in central London on Christmas Day has died. 25-year-old Aidan Chapman was amongst four people who were hit by a vehicle which was driven on the wrong side of the road in Shaftesbury Avenue. Well, before we take a break, let me take you back live to New Orleans, show the live pictures there. The huge police and FBI operation currently underway. That, of course, very close to Bourbon Street, where the attack happened, but right across the state there are searches in the main suspect's house. The driver of that pickup truck, identified as Shamsuddin Jabbar, a US Army veteran, so FBI search is going on at his house. We're waiting, of course, in the next half an hour to hear an update from the police and the authorities as they wait to give us more details on whether there were accomplices involved. So we will carry that live here on BBC News. Welcome back to BBC News. Let's turn to our main headlines here. The US authorities believe the suspect behind the deadly New Orleans attack was not acting alone. President Biden says the attacker was inspired by the Islamic State group. Well, this is the scene live in New Orleans, where the FBI is expected to give an update in the next half an hour. Our other headlines: South Korean police say the chief executive of Jeju Air has been banned from leaving the country as they continue their investigations into Sunday's deadly air crash. And we'll be speaking to the Oscar-winning filmmaker Asif Kapadia about his latest docudrama, 2073. Well, all of those stories are coming up. First, though, all the sport. Will Perry is here. And good afternoon, Will.
Good afternoon to you, Matthew. Right, Real Madrid's head coach Carlo Ancelotti has refused to deny that his club are trying to sign Trent Alexander-Arnold from Liverpool. We understand the Spanish side have made an approach which Liverpool pushed back on. Matthew, that's all the sport for now.
Well, thanks very much. Well, straight back to our main story. US prosecutors say they're fairly certain that multiple people were involved in the truck attack that killed 15 people in New Orleans on New Year's Day. Around the world and across the UK, you are watching BBC News. You're watching BBC News now. The proportion of patients here in England being diagnosed with cancer at an early stage has risen to its highest ever level, according to new NHS figures. The latest data on 13 of the most common cancers, like breast, prostate and lung cancer, show that nearly 3 in 5 patients are now being diagnosed in the earliest stages of the disease, when it is far easier to treat. Here's our health correspondent, Dominic Hughes. Well, before we break, let me take you back and show you the live pictures, because we are expecting that news update from the police in New Orleans after that deadly attack. Will they confirm there were accomplices who worked with Shamsuddin Jabbar? That is one of the key questions. And what more have they learned about the US Army veteran, how he was actually radicalised? So we are expecting that news conference to start in 5 minutes or so. We will carry it live. Also, more information coming from Las Vegas and the FBI searches that have been going on in a house in Colorado Springs. They are linking that, the FBI say, to that explosion of a Tesla Cybertruck in Las Vegas. But next up, we'll carry that news conference live from New Orleans. Live from London, this is BBC News. The US authorities believe the suspect behind the New Orleans attack that killed 15 people and left dozens injured was not acting alone. Well, these are the live pictures from New Orleans, where the authorities are about to hold a news conference. We'll carry that live just as soon as it starts. Details of some of the victims are emerging, amongst them a Princeton University football star, a father of 2 and an aspiring nurse. Investigators are also searching a home in Colorado Springs in connection with the explosion of a truck outside the Trump Hotel in Las Vegas. It's not clear whether the 2 incidents are linked. Hello and welcome to BBC News. Let me take you straight to New Orleans, show you the live pictures, because the scene is all set up there. The police, the authorities due to give a update to the media in terms of their investigation after the attack in New Orleans that left 15 people dead and, of course, dozens others injured. We've seen searches at the home today of the driver of that pickup truck, Shamsuddin Jabbar. Well, one final question being thrown at the variety of authorities, but no, they have finished and gone away. Let me recap the main points. The FBI counter-terrorism official saying this was an act of terrorism, it was premeditated and an evil act. He went on to say, and the crucial question, the attacker had acted alone. He then went on to say they had recovered 3 phones and 2 IEDs were also recovered. And he said the killer had joined ISIS 100%. He was inspired by Islamic State, and then went on to say the FBI had received 400 tips from the public. And then both the governor and the mayor of New Orleans saying that Bourbon Street, that crime scene, has now been turned over to the city of New Orleans, and they expected it to be opened at 2:30 p.m. local time. They have that very big event, the Sugar Bowl college game, that is happening today at 3 o'clock local time. So Bourbon Street will be reopened in time for that. So those the key lines coming out of that news conference live there in New Orleans. Well, we stay with us as we turn here on BBC News to our main headlines, and that story absolutely dominating. The FBI update their working theory on the deadly New Orleans attack. They now believe that the man was acting alone.
Let me be very clear about this point. This was an act of terrorism. It was premeditated and an evil act.
And I'm Carl Nassman, live in New Orleans, where even as those investigations continue, the site of that attack in this city's famous Bourbon Street is preparing to reopen.
2 laptops and 3 phones were recovered in the hunt for evidence, while bomb technicians find 2 improvised explosive devices hidden in coolers. Well, investigators say there is no definitive link with the explosion of a Tesla Cybertruck outside the Trump Hotel in Las Vegas, but they're following all potential leads. Hello and welcome to BBC News. If you've been watching in the last half hour, we've just had that briefing by the FBI holding that news conference in Louisiana, giving details on their investigation into the New Orleans terror attack in which 40 people were killed, as well as the driver. Samsud-Din Jabbar drove a hired pickup truck along a street crowded with people celebrating New Year.
Massive jails there with people being held there. So lots of factors in place. This is definitely going to be looked at on a broader picture in days to come.
Carl, thanks very much for the latest from New Orleans. Stay with us here on the BBC for more from the US. Welcome back to BBC News. Let's turn to our main headlines here. The FBI have given their latest on the investigation into the deadly New Orleans attack. They now believe the man was acting alone. New cancer figures from the NHS show more people than ever are being diagnosed in the early stages, but it comes with a warning that treatment services are still falling short. Bradford becomes the UK's city of culture. From live music to the iconic Turner Prize, there's a spectacle of creativity coming to the city in 2025. And the rapper Stormzy is banned from driving for 9 months after pleading guilty to using his mobile phone behind the wheel. Well, more on all of those stories is coming up. First, though, sport, and Tanya Arnold is with us. And Tanya, good evening.
Good evening, Matthew. Let's start with football because Rangers have thumped Celtic 3-0 in the Old Firm derby, but still trailed them by 11 points in the Premiership. And that is all your sport for now, Matthew.
Tanya, thanks very much. Let's go straight back and recap events in New Orleans, because we've had that briefing from the FBI in the last little while. These are the live pictures, because Bourbon Street is going to be reopened to the public and to businesses there in about 3 hours from now, but heavy police activity still in the area. The FBI saying in the last hour or so that this was an act of terrorism, it was premeditated and evil, but crucially saying the attacker had acted alone. He'd been 100% inspired by Islamic State investigating. So those the crucial lines coming from that news briefing that we were watching. There will be more from the authorities in New Orleans. But that's it from today's Verified Live. Thanks so much for watching, and hopefully I'll see you next time. Bye for now.
Hello. Well, we didn't have to wait very long in the new year to see a sharp